So here we are in our geology notes. We're in section number 2, surface processes. We finished weathering types and rates, and now let's move on to soil, which is on page 31 of your notes. So if we look at this soil, which covers up most of the ground in our area, that soil is formed because of weathering. So rocks get weathered, and that's what forms soil. So soil, it's formed by weathering and biological activity. That's what's going to create our soil. When we look at soil, what that soil is composed of is usually almost all weathered rock. There's also a lot of air and water, and you notice the amount of the air and the amount of water can change, because when it rains, that water is going to fill up some of those air spaces. When the ground is completely saturated, can be completely filled with water, this might be 50% water. If the ground is dry, this might be 50% air, or maybe 48% air. So that's going to change depending on what's going on in the ground. And then there's anywhere from 5 to 10% organic matter that is in the soil as well. As the soil forms over time, it's going to create what look like layers, and we call them different horizons that have different characteristics. So this top layer right here, which has most of the organic matter from this biological activity, is called the O horizon. The next layer down is the A horizon, then the B and C horizon. And then down at the bottom, we hit solid bedrock. Let's take a look at So here we could see where a digger has dug into the ground. This is putting some piping and drainage pipes down at Turning Point Park. And you could see this is a well-developed soil. And you could see how there's different layers, or what we call horizons. This top layer is the O horizon. And this is where we find a lot of roots from the plants, animals burrowing into this horizon. When leaves decay and rot, we see a lot of organic material here. And it tends to have a dark color. Below the O horizon is the A horizon. After the A horizon is the B horizon. And then there's the C horizon, which has a lot of large weathered rock material in it. Usually we see some large chunks of rocks in that C horizon. So the O horizon, A, B, and C horizons. The O horizon is called the O because of the organic material that's in there. So that's why we have this strange lettering here. Instead of just A, B, C, D, it's this O horizon in here because of the worms and roots and other things. So that O stands for organic material. There are generally two types of soil, there are generally two types of soil, residual soil and transported. The difference between them is the residual soil formed in place, meaning the chunks of the rock that we see. Remember, when we look at soil, it's made up of weathered rock. When we look at those chunks of weathered rock in the soil, residual soils, those chunks of rock are from the bedrock. So here we have pieces of limestone from the limestone bedrock. So this soil formed in this area. This is where it was made. Transported soils, though, the rocks that we find in the soil do not match the bedrock. So these rocks in here, in this case, some granite rocks, must have formed somewhere else, and then that soil was transported to this area. And the reason we talk about this, especially here in New York State, is most of the soil in New York State is transported soil, transported here by the glaciers. So as glaciers moved across the North American continent, they pushed soil, they scraped the ground and scraped residual soils away. And that way, when the glaciers melted, what they left behind was this transported soil. So we have noticed the differences. The rocks that we see in the soil are different than what we see in the bedrock. New York State soil is mostly this transported soil. So a couple points to review is soil forms from weathering and biological activity. It's made of weathered rock, air, water, and organic matter. When it develops into different horizons. And there are two types: residual, which is made up of the rock, made up of bedrock, and then transported, which is generally made up of material from somewhere else and does not necessarily match the bedrock.